So the Toyota Land Cruiser is known around the world as one of the ultimate go-anywhere SUVs. But as many of you know, there is also a Lexus version which shares the same ultra-capable foundation. Both also cost very close to $100,000 here in the US. So the question remains, which rugged and luxurious Toyota SUV is the best choice? Let's go ahead and find out. Now I'll go ahead and preface from the very beginning that since these two are related to each other, there are more similarities than differences. The first thing on the agenda is pricing and equipment. While variations in prices don't really matter as much to people shopping in the near six-figure range, it is still important to recognize them. The Land Cruiser comes in only one variation in the US, so its price is going to be $86,682 after destination. The LX starts out more expensive, and all of the ones that we've ever seen come with the luxury package and a few other options. Its price out the door is $98,928. Therefore, in order to be fair, we will do a half point per $1,000 of difference, or 6 points to the Land Cruiser. Nevertheless, as far as styling is concerned, they are on totally different planets. The Land Cruiser has its traditional conservative styling, while the LX is extremely bold in its approach, especially with the huge spindle grille. The same goes for the headlights, which are both LED but styled with two different philosophies. And the only scoreable difference is that the Land Cruiser has incandescent turn signals instead of LEDs in the front and rear. As far as the side and back though, this is where you can start to tell that they are related. They have the same body lines, but differences in the details. The only other style related items to mention are the wheels, which are much larger on the LX, 21 inches versus 18s. But beyond looks, capabilities are very important to these trucks. Both ground clearances measure in at 8.9 inches, but there are two things to keep in mind. The LX's large grille does impede on the approach angles compared to the Toyota's by about 10 degrees. But the LX has an adjustable air suspension, which allows it to go up and down significantly for everyday use. That being said, only the Land Cruiser has a skid plate. I do want to point out that the Land Cruiser only comes in one fully loaded trim in the US, so that means it comes with all the same stuff as the LX in regards to the mirrors and safety systems. Both have pre-collision braking with pedestrian detection, lane departure alert with steering assist, adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, and auto high beam headlights. Next up we have the warranties, which are completely different from each other. The Lexus has longer terms for both basic and powertrain warranties, but Lexus only does 1 year of complimentary maintenance compared to 2 with the Toyota. Finally, in regards to max towing, the Land Cruiser can handle 1,100 pounds more weight. But that pretty much sums up the exteriors, so now let's see which cabin has the most luxurious experience before we take them out on the road. So walking up to the vehicles, both are obviously going to have smart entry systems and the ability to remote start via the respective applications. And then once inside the interiors, they are pretty different in designs, just like the exteriors. On the Toyota, we have the terracotta brown interior, finished in high-end semi-aniline leather. The Lexus also uses the same semi-aniline leather, finished in this case in a beautiful red called Cabernet. As far as the seats themselves, the LX includes extra thigh extension, in addition to the heating, ventilation, and 3-person memory seating. Now obviously they cost similar amounts of money and are related, so both cabins are quite nice. However, the LX definitely has a number of nicer touches. It has more leather, aluminum, and wood throughout, which make it feel like the more special place. As far as the gauges, they are nearly identical, but the LX does have an additional head-up display. Of course, it does pretty much go without saying that both have power adjusting, heated steering wheels with leather and wood. Storage, likewise, is basically identical between the two, including the cool boxes and the wireless phone charger. When I shift into reverse, both have 360-degree camera systems with active trajectory. And then next to the shifters are a ton of different buttons, all regarding the off-road systems. Now this stuff is mostly the same between the two models, however the Lexus does have an electronic parking brake. And now that brings us to the audio systems, so let's go ahead and take a sample. Both are great, but to my ears, the LX has the edge. The next thing to look at up the dashboard are the climate controls. Now even though they look vastly different, both are 4-zone automatic. However, Lexus fits all the controls into physical buttons, which is something Toyota didn't manage to do. Now digging into the displays themselves, both have pros and cons. Obviously, the Lexus's 12.3-inch display is significantly larger than the Land Cruiser's 8-inch one. But keep in mind there is no touchscreen ability in the LX. Neither of them have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay at this point. And then finally, ending the front part of the cabin, both have regular sized moonroofs. Now checking out the rear seats, you will see a number of similarities, but also some differences in the features. First off, space is pretty much identical as expected, and then both of them have heated seats and 2 zones of climate. The few differences though are the sunshades and better seats that have both power adjustment and ventilation in the Lexus. And as far as the third rows, again both are the same as far as measurements, but in this case also the features. Moving around back, both have the weird 2-part tailgate design, and once they open up after a considerable amount of time, they have the same amounts of cargo capacity. The one important thing to note though is that the Land Cruiser doesn't have a power third row, which makes folding its seats more of a pain. Alrighty, so that's it for the interiors. Now let's go ahead and take them out for a spin. So as you'd expect, driving these two siblings does bring about similar, though not identical responses. First of all, since they have the same powertrains, acceleration feels the same in both. So first taking off here in the 2020 Lexus LX 570. Definitely we have plenty of power. This is mechanically related to the Land Cruiser that we just drove
about a month ago.
About a month ago. So of course, in the same way that operated, we do have just this big burly V8 on board. Alright, so first taking off in the 2019 Land Cruiser. This is a really big SUV. It does feel big. It definitely feels big, but the power does feel adequate for something of this size. Now 380 horsepower, and a lot of vehicles would actually make it quite fast. This is not fast for sure, but like I said, it does feel adequate.
But I do really like the sound of it. It being an old school V8, you know, it has a very raspy sound to it, and a lot of people really like that, especially in these big SUVs.
Both also have 8-speed automatics and full-time 4-wheel drive systems. And as far as handling is concerned, these trucks both have a large, heavy feel in the way they steer and in the way that their body responds to movements. The only important difference in the way they perform on the road is that the Land Cruiser has significantly more nosedive when braking, since the LX's adaptive suspension is able to compensate better. Now the shocks are, you know, off-road soft, so you're going to feel that when you brake and accelerate. There is considerable nosedive as well as tail dive. But of course, that is the trade-off you make for the capability. You have such crazy articulation when you're off-road at all the different wheels, and you know, you'll get used to it. I drive a sedan, so that's why I'm definitely noticing it. Versus the Land Cruiser, it is important to remember that this comes with an air suspension. So, while I probably will still say the words old school many times during this test drive, it's not the same level of old school as the Land Cruiser. It does feel different. One of those things is the ride is smoother, and the way that it kind of handles things. I can definitely tell that so far it's been a lot less bouncy.
Oh yeah.
You know, so it's a little bit more buttoned down.
It behaves more like a traditional, like, large luxury 3-row, you know, like an Escalade. If you got in an Escalade and then got in a Land Cruiser, you'd be like, what is going on? But, you know, this kind of behaves pretty much like those other cars. And it is worth noting that with the air suspension, you know, that road we were just on is so rough. And we've been on it in like 100 different cars, so we definitely know that it's a rough road, and it almost makes you forget about how rough it is, just this car being that smooth and comfortable.
And finally, fuel economy is equally bad. Well guys, that's where we are going to finish up this comparison video. As you can probably tell, these two body-on-frame SUVs have a lot in common, but the LX simply offers more in terms of features. At the end of the day, what it is really going to boil down to is your personal taste. Anyways, thanks for joining us on this unique and interesting car confections comparison. And be sure to subscribe for more comparisons as well as our signature full review videos. Take care.